Hey peeps, and welcome to a Workshop Wednesday episode. I'm taking this particular video. It's usually Craig that's in the workshop, but I'm going to attempt this one myself. Today we are looking at the SFX10 Sound Capsule from Traintech. And it really is from Traintech as well. The very nice guy that runs this firm saw the video I did last year on the Traintech lighting strip. And he said, hey, that was a pretty cool video. How about I send you some more stuff? And I said, yes, please, that would be great. So he sent through this SFX10 Sound Capsule. He's also sent through like a little flickering light for the back of a coach, but we'll look at that in a separate video. So apologies to Traintech and the guy behind it for how long it's taken to get this video done, but I am finally getting around to it, and as I say, getting on top of everything. So we're here. We're going to look at Traintech sound. Now, when it comes to sound, we all know that DCC sound with chips like ESU and Lock Sound and Southwest Digital are just incredible, but they cost a lot of money. And then we know that Hornby have recently released TTS, Twin Track Sound, which is a little bit cheaper. Well, it's actually quite a lot cheaper, and apparently almost as good. And I've done a couple of videos on both, and I must admit, it's incredible value for money. But this takes things to a whole new level, or at least we hope it's going to. This Traintech sound chip is the cheapest way of getting sound into any loco at all. And not only is it attractive because of the price, but it's attractive because it's battery operated, so you don't need to worry about conductivity through the rails, and you can fit it to any tender, well, nearly any tender, nearly any locomotive, and nearly any piece of rolling stock, even right down to N gauge. So, those are some pretty amazing claims. Let's find out what's inside the pack. What I will point out is that on the instructions here, you can see there's an LNER tender. Now that's pretty appropriate because I'm going to be fitting it to an LNER tender. Our test subject today, ladies and gentlemen, is a beautiful Hornby B12. And that's quite special, and you'll find out why in a moment. But as you can see, this B12 from Hornby is just beautiful. It does come with its own sound mechanism. Here we go, you ready? That's it, folks. That's as good as it gets. Yeah, so whilst it was a nice touch, it's not actually quite, well, let's be honest, it's pretty pathetic, isn't it? So we're going to cut that off, and this sound capsule will replace that. I'm hoping there's enough room in the tender for it to go in here, but we'll see, we'll find out. It is a pretty small and compact loco, and if you look at the instructions, it looks like they're working with a Flying Scotsman tender or something. It's really quite big. But we'll see how we go. So yeah, we've got a gorgeous apple green B12 there. I think it's not apple green, is it? No, it's is it Brunswick green? No, it doesn't look dark enough to be. Well, whatever green it is, we have a nice LNER B12. It's one of my favourite locomotives from the LNER. So you get your instructions with a little LNER tender on. You also get a battery, the actual mechanism itself, and a little rubber tube, which we'll come on to later. It is impressive just what a neat piece of engineering this is, and I have to point out that is one nice little PCB. It's really, really nice and really compact for obvious reasons. This little thing here, that's the actual motion sensor, and what's quite cool about that is that it operates using a tiny gold-plated ball bearing, and if you actually hold this up to your ear and give it a rattle, you can hear that ball bearing inside. That is so cool. I certainly hope I haven't damaged it by doing that. I don't think I have. But it's really nice that they've included a battery as well. That's just what we've come to expect from Traintech, really. They're thinking of everything. So, let's open the instructions. Now, as you open it, you'll see that they're advertising lots of other products. There's nothing wrong with that. That's really quite good business acumen, to be honest. But what we need to focus on is this. Now, it looks a bit overwhelming maybe because there's just so much to read through, but it's genuinely not that bad, and it only took me 5 minutes, okay? So that's really not too bad. All you need to really bear in mind is that if you're going to fit it into like a wagon or a coach or a tender or a locomotive, you need to try and position the motion sensor as far away from the speaker as possible, and I think that's probably because you don't want any interference and you don't want the speaker to be activating itself, if you know what I mean. So, with that said, let's have a look at what it says, because look, this is really cool. It talks about the sounds. SFX10 Steam Sounds, SFX10 Steam Loco Sounds. These are the sounds you can expect to hear from your SFX10. They are not simulated effects, but real sounds, recorded by us on the North Norfolk Railway from Steam Loco B12 8572. Wow! B12? This is a B12, number 8556. So, this is incredible, folks. This is very, very appropriate. These sounds genuinely are going to be what you would hear from this locomotive. So that isn't actually planned. That is just total coincidence. I was always going to fit it into a B12. I was going to fit it into the blue B12 I have in the train set, the Anglian. But I decided on the green one because of the livery. Because the Anglian has got a BR livery, and this is an LNER livery, just like on the front of this. So that's why I chose the green one. But yeah, B12 sounds. So you can expect to hear resting. Wow. Oh, sorry, no. It does say except the coaling shoveling, which is from Oliver Cromwell, 70013. Okay. So right. So there's a guy doing the shoveling on a different loco, but apart from that, everything is the B12. So we'll let them off. That's pretty cool. So, resting, gentle steam hiss plus a pump and occasional fireman coaling. Any movement triggers the sound of steam release, and if motion continues, there is a short whistle followed by chuffs. Nice. Steam chuffs get gradually faster as speed builds, and then coasts with a steam hiss for a while before the chuffs return. A double whistle sounds if the loco travels continuously for a while. When motion stops, it returns to resting sounds. When there is no motion for around a minute, the SFX automatically goes to sleep and waits for movement to wake it up. How cool is that? Really, really clever, really fancy. So it says, look, as you can see, it says, please read these instructions before using your SFX. And I've read them all. As I say, it takes about 5 minutes, so it's really not a hard thing to do. It sounds unbelievably easy. It's basically just insert the battery into the battery holder. It will sound immediately, and then drop it into wherever you want it to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is, what shall we do? Shall I do that right now, or shall I try and open up the tender? I think I'm going to try and open up the tender. Yeah. Okay, so the battery is free and ready to be used. Okay, pretty nervous, but here we go, folks. Wow, can you hear that? I know that the sounds are really, really small. They're really, really quiet. Let me fit the rubber tube and see if that makes a difference. Oh gosh, you can hear it immediately, can't you? Whoa! Listen to that! I did not expect it to sound quite that good. Okay. Oh, I think it's returning to resting sounds. What happens if I give it a wriggle? Let's give it a bit more of a wiggle. Can you hear that? I hope you can hear that. Hey, look, it's motoring now. And then if I just rest it on the surface again. And just leave it. And there we go. Hey, that is genuinely not bad. And that's the pump, I think the instructions mentioned. It certainly sounds like it. We should hear the odd bit of shoveling as well. There we go. Yeah, that was some shoveling. Oh, more coal shoveling. That's really impressive. And in theory, it should switch itself off soon as well. Wow. What do we think of that, folks? I am really impressed. I did not expect such a tiny little and relatively inexpensive piece of circuitry to produce such good sounds. I think that's really cool. I do think it's going to be important to experiment, because one thing I've noticed is that apart from the bottom bit there in the tender, the base of the tender, there are no holes anywhere else in this tender. So I might have to maybe think about replacing the plastic wheels with metal wheels, taking the weight out, adding weight to the top of the tender in there somewhere, and then maybe drilling more holes in so that we get even more sound. It's going to be an experimental thing, isn't it? I'm going to have to experiment and find what's best. But I am very keen to get this into that tender because that sounds really good. I'm just going to use my fingers and maybe a hairdryer or something to properly shape this rubber tubing. But I'm going to attempt to fit it into that tender, close it up, and then see what the sound's like. Okay, so welcome back. As you can see, I'm mid modificating here. So let me just put the tender back on the track over there. You can see what I've done is I've cut off a little bit of the rubber tubing that makes the sound tube, as it's called. And I've taken the battery out as well whilst I do this in order to save battery life, because it really is just silly for it to keep playing all these sounds whilst I'm carrying out the modifications. And yeah, the shorter you make this sound tube, the less rich, the less bassy the sounds become. That's a fact. However, I've thought of something quite cool, something quite clever, and I'm going to put this back on just to demonstrate. So if we put the tube back over the top of the speaker like that, and then I put the battery in place and then hold it there with my finger, you can see that already it's playing the sounds, and it's playing them pretty well. But if I hold this to the end of the tubing, you can see that they get a bit richer. However, because of that little plastic piece coming down through the centre of the tender, I'm not going to be able to have the full length. So what I'm going to do, if I take the battery out again, is I'm just going to slip this little sleeve over the end of my original tubing, the main piece of tubing, and now what I have is variable tubing. So I can just move this, I can slide it up and down to get the perfect length so that I can maximise, absolutely maximise the amount of space inside this tender. So I'm going to finish that off and then fit the battery, mount it all up, and then we'll see what it's like. Okay, as you can hear from the sound chip, the battery is definitely put back in place. I have fitted it to the tender as best as I can. There really isn't very much room inside that tender. You can see here that this is as much of the sound capsule as I was able to utilise. So my whole idea, my whole plan to use as much of this as possible fell through, unfortunately. When I did have it the other way around, with the battery up against the back, because of the base of the battery, the base of the PCB, it was just colliding with the base of the tender, and it just wouldn't close properly. The only place that the actual PCB with the battery could go was in the centre of the tender. So it's basically thanks to the generous coal load in the top of the tender that this unit fits at all. So it really is a small tender to try and fit it in. But I've successfully done it. I know I could have put it into a wagon, I could have put it into a coach where there was heaps more room, and I could probably make it sound much better. But I really wanted it to go in this loco, and so I persisted. But watch out for maybe possible future videos where I shall fit them to box cars and Mark 1 coaches and stuff like that. The important thing is, the motion sensor is well away from the speaker. There's plenty of the tubing for the sound to resonate, and the actual shape, the actual box of the tender itself resonates the sound as well, which is really quite impressive. So now the actual entire tender can go together, and if I close it up like thus, you can hear that the tender is still making a noise. And if I hold it still long enough, it should return to resting. There we go. So I'm going to put the screw back in place now, connect it back up to the locomotive, put it on the track and see what happens. Oh, that's pretty good. We've got like a little bit of a chuff. What if we reverse? Yes, chuffing. And stop. Wow! Seriously folks, that's impressive. And now it's gone into that resting mode. Okay, so just to finish, I'm going to put the locomotive, well rather the device, the sound chip inside the tender, through a pretty cheeky test, just to really see how good it is. I'm going to trick the locomotive into think that it's rolling off and doing a normal duty, when actually we're going to slam on the emergency brakes somewhere around here. I'm going to see or rather hear, just how long it takes for the device to detect that there's no movement and switch off the chuffing sound. No way! What was that? It must have been about half a second or something. Seriously folks, this is excellent. It's not very loud, I must admit. Compared to TTS sound and DC sound, it's not very loud. But then maybe I could improve on that by adjusting the, where I've placed the chip, or maybe even fitting something else to the actual speaker rather than some like rubber tubing. As the locomotive is at speed going around the layout, it can be quite hard to hear the device. But at medium speeds to at low to average speeds, it's plenty loud enough. Seriously, peeps, this is just. I've never seen a product make me smile so much in quite a long time. It's incredible. It's so easy to fit, and it's such a bargain price. There genuinely is no excuse now for not having umpteen sounds coming from your layout, from any layout. Yeah, you've just got to try it. Seriously, give it a go.